Good afternoon, everyone. Guten Tag. Mein Name ist Arkam Javed. That's about all the German I know, so the rest of this has to be in English, unfortunately. But essentially, I'm currently studying computer science at Harvard. I'm one of the co-founders of the Harvard undergraduate blockchain group, and I'm one of the co-founders and the product lead here at Inkrypt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wardah Chaudhary, and I am the founder and marketing lead for Inkrypt. Both Arkam and I come from countries like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, so we're no strangers to censorship. While growing up, we've seen sites like YouTube and Facebook being blocked, and we've even witnessed news organizations being shut down for speaking against the government. So tackling this prevalent issue is something we are very passionate about. Before we begin, let's take a look at the current landscape of digital media. In this digital age, we are seeing a growing trend of digital media rapidly taking over print and televised news. In a recent study, it shows that newspaper circulation has gone down about 50% since the 2000s, with internet news taking over. While now many of us here come from countries that enjoy a high degree of freedom of information, unfortunately, that's not the case for majority of the world. About 75% of internet users around the world experience some kind of censorship. And that's not all. Attacks on news outlets, journalists, and bloggers have increased about 50% since last year. Censorship is a big issue we are facing in journalism and at society at large. And if we don't take steps now to prevent it, it will only worsen.
So let's take a look at how exactly these third parties and malicious actors are able to censor from a technical perspective. What you see on the screen over here is a simplified version of the traditional data infrastructure on the internet as it exists today. Under this protocol, any kind of request for content has to be forwarded to the exact physical location where that content is hosted. This kind of centralization creates a single point of failure that any kind of malicious actor, third party, or government can easily take advantage of and block access to content. Unfortunately, it doesn't just end there, as most of the data we have on the internet is hosted in data silos around the world that are manned by companies like Google, Amazon, or Microsoft. And oftentimes, these companies or corporations are more than willing to acquiesce to the government demands for their own economic interests. And it's essentially the combination of these several different factors that truly hampers the free flow of information on the internet as it exists today.
This flaw in the existing technology that Arkam pointed out has huge implications. Governments are able to track and even monitor what journalists are reporting, and will go to any length to take action. One example that we've seen is how Burmese government jailed journalists for covering the Rohingya genocide. Governments are not just stopping there. In 2011, Egyptian government shut down internet to prevent protests. Governments are becoming more skilled at using these technologies to misinform. And if they ever feel threatened by these technologies, they're willing and able to shut it down completely.
What we need is a technical solution that prevents any single entity, identity, or corporation from having complete control over the flow of data. And the solution to that is what you see up here on the screen. This is a decentralized internet infrastructure. Under this kind of protocol, even if several different computers on the network are shut down, coerced, or blocked, data is still accessible because of the multiple redundancies that exist in storage, in distribution, and the multiple access points. And so, because data is accessible, it is also permanent.
Even though this technology is new, We have already started to see successful uses of it already. One example is of the Catalonia referendum, where the Spanish federal government were able to shut down the local news organization. And citizen journalists there turned to a decentralized protocol called IPFS that helped them go around censorship and spread news to citizens. Another successful use case can be seen in China, where students used Ethereum blockchain to prevent a sexual assault case from being covered up. So this just shows that journalists in censored areas are already using distributed solutions.
Now, to make these solutions that Wardah just mentioned more viable, and to make the content that is hosted on these networks more accessible, the next crucial step is to enhance the privacy and security for both the consumers and the publishers of content. The key here is making all communications between computers on the network anonymous. Now, the combination of anonymous networks and decentralized protocols cloaks the location of any kind of consumer or producer or publisher on these networks, and it encrypts the content that they are sharing. This has two main impacts. First of all, publishers, by being able to send through these cloaked anonymous networks, are no longer able to be tracked or monitored by governments, and so they enjoy this high level of security and privacy. And then secondly, because of the content being difficult to monitor and because of it being encrypted, it is much more difficult for governments, third parties, or other entities to be able to block or manipulate the flow of information. So essentially, what using anonymous networks with these decentralized protocols does is it makes the producers or the publishers and consumers enjoy a higher level of enhanced security, and it makes all content on these networks that online bloggers or journalists are sharing much more accessible all around the world. Now, decentralized solutions such as blockchain, IPFS, or any kind of decentralized storage solution is not an end-all, be-all solution. They are not a panacea. In fact, these kinds of protocols can very easily become hubs for malicious content like fake news or child pornography. And it's essential and crucial that we understand these limitations and shortcomings or problems that these kinds of solutions can have, especially if we want to create enterprise solutions for industries that are sensitive like journalism. Now, luckily, the blockchain community has an elegant solution for this in the form of decentralized governance. One of the great bonuses that blockchain provides is its ability to build communities. Because everyone that is part of the network has a stake in the system, they're incentivized to form and build these kinds of communities. And this kind of principle can be taken advantage of, and we can create certain kinds of incentivization systems in which the very individuals that are dedicated to proliferating freedom of information and providing a freer society can be incentivized to weed out misinformation and malicious content. And what's groundbreaking about this is it's essentially returning professionalism back to this industry. By having these journalists have agency now to decide what is and what isn't news, we're reinstating this idea of professionalism, and no longer will governments or even mob mentality or other entities be able to decide what is and what isn't journalism. We return that agency back to the journalists themselves. So, to sum all of this up, for us to create a viable solution that is censorship resistant for journalism, the following three things are absolutely necessary. The first foundation is a decentralized storage infrastructure. And the main use case of this is that it prevents any individual from having control or access to be able to block content completely. On top of that, it creates this data permanency that is necessary for censorship resistance. The next step that's needed is an anonymization layer. And what this is essential for it is that it provides this enhanced security for those who are browsing the network and even those who are publishing, and it makes it to where content is much more accessible to people all over the world, and it can go past firewalls of China, countries in the Middle East, or anywhere else in the world. Lastly, what's needed is a decentralized governance mechanism that can help curate content and maintain a high level of journalism and weed out any kind of misinformation, fake news, or child pornography. So essentially, it's these three conditions that are absolutely necessary for us to create an environment that can foster any kind of free flow of information and censorship resistance in this vertical of journalism.
Both Arkam and I are happy to present Inkrypt, a Harvard-incubated, decentralized cloud platform that is designed to be a solution for world issues like censorship of media, whistleblowing, and other verticals that require a high level of security and privacy, as discussed. The premise of Inkrypt is that anyone around the world that has access storage on their laptop, computers, or phone could rent out that storage and host fragments of content while being compensated. All that content on Inkrypt is then fragmented, encrypted, replicated, and distributed on all the computers on the network. Inkrypt is providing a all-in-one solution for enabling a freer society. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Please follow our Telegram and Twitter page, and be sure to check out our website.
Thank you.